This video was sponsored by Ipsosai.
Jack, you need to get up.
What the hell is going on, BT?
The IMC has launched a surprise attack.
What does this mean, buddy?
It means I'm about to throw you 100 meters into the air into a jet.
Wait, what?
Welcome to the battlefield, pilot.
Battlefield Titanfall. This entire concept may sound insane to some, but the more time you might spend thinking about its potential, the more you start to realize how realistic this project could be. The title might conjure the class systems of Battlefield, the movement and Titan combat of Titanfall, and the ability to take the best parts of both franchises and create what is potentially the most insane shooter ever conceived. Firstly, we need only to look at both franchises to know that they are not exactly at their high water marks. Although clearly making a valiant attempt to course correct after its shaky launch, Battlefield 2042 has never been able to recover from its initial impression to the public, and DICE has promised to return to form in the next entry to the series. Titanfall, on the other hand, is in an even stranger position. Its fan base even now is incredibly hungry for a new entry in the series, and even YouTube videos about Titanfall to this day still generate a surprisingly high viewership. The Titanfall franchise, however, seems to be somewhat held hostage by Apex Legends, and by making another Titanfall game, EA would risk cannibalizing its own player base, which is likely why there are still no plans for a Titanfall 3. With this in mind, Titanfall fans are reaching levels of despair that probably need medication, meaning there's still a huge hole in the market for a genuine Titanfall experience. Legally, the process of combining the two franchises into a single game wouldn't even be difficult. Both series are the property of Electronic Arts, meaning they could start making such a game tomorrow if they so choose. Even better, however, is that both franchises are actually headed by the same person, Vince Zampella, who would probably be the best person on the face of the planet to pull something like this off. Mr. Zampella is famous for producing some of the earliest Medal of Honor games, heading the original Modern Warfare 1 and 2 titles, as well as leading the creation of the entire Titanfall universe. This guy is the Michael Jordan of making shooters, and he's yet to lead a single miss in the past 2 decades. This is likely why, following the relative failure of Battlefield 2042, EA straight up gave Zampella the keys to the entire franchise, because if you want a damn good shooter, you put this guy in charge. The great thing about a Battlefield and Titanfall crossover is that both games are actually formatted quite similarly. They are both casual shooters, both support an objective-based style of play, and both balance a vehicle to infantry dynamic in their own ways. For such a crossover, you could make the maps really fucking enormous, as not only could you support an 128 player lobby, but pilot movement would make the maps much quicker to traverse anyway. These spaces might be as big as Battlefield maps, but it would be essential for them to be planned in the Titanfall style. The original Titanfall maps especially were very well designed to offer clear free running routes and ways to outmaneuver Titan enemies, while also allowing Titan space between buildings and in strategic points of interest. If they wanted to get extra ambitious, they could even add limited destructibility to the environment, which could do things such as open up alternative free running routes, or allow Titans access to previously enclosed areas. To make this game work, this would probably have to be some of the best fucking map design for any shooter ever made. The good news is that the aesthetics of Battlefield and Titanfall are actually pretty similar. Hourglass looks like Rise, Discarded is just Relic, and you can't tell me that Renewal doesn't just look like Olympus. Titanfall has always had quite a grounded and almost rustic approach to its environment design, and you don't often notice that it's set hundreds of years in the future until a giant death machine starts throwing hands. Furthermore, the Battlefield franchise is able to transcend any singular setting, and I'd bet a lot of money that the Titanfall universe would be one of the most popular options available. What's more, both franchises have leaned into the use of AI to fill their maps to good effect. Titanfall's notoriously low player counts are compensated by the use of AI grunts, which act as an extra threat to the player, a way to fill in empty spaces, and an option to farm a player's Titan. For Battlefield game modes like Conquest, for example, Perhaps these grunts could act as a barrier to capture particular points, while also making the battlefield feel more alive. While we are on the topic, let's straight up make the smart pistol a regular secondary, with the catch that it only locks onto NPCs, while being objectively weak against players. Finally, world peace has been solved. Perhaps the hardest gameplay aspect to reconcile is the respawn system. In Titanfall, respawns are instant, and usually fairly close to the thick of combat, but in Battlefield, respawns can only happen in areas controlled by your team, meaning holding points of interest is very important for winning the game. To merge these systems, I'd propose giving all players the ability to cool down drop pods, which would be on a cooldown, and be able to be placed anywhere on the map. After a short delay, up to 4 respawning players who have queued inside will be sent in the drop pod to wherever it was called, allowing them to return to where they are most needed. This would mean that players can still respawn quickly into the thick of the fight, but only where the team has created enough space to do so. Other ideas could be bigger dropships, or even just being softballed into the battlefield from a few hundred meters away. In any case, players should never be too far from the fight. If we know anything about the Battlefield and Titanfall communities, it's that you degenerates are about the most opinionated motherfuckers on the planet, and if opinions were worth anything, you'd all be a few dollars richer. Luckily, opinions are actually worth something, all thanks to today's sponsor, Ipsos. I say. Ipsos is a nearly 50-year-old market research company, willing to pay viewers like yourself for just giving your opinions, and it's more simple than you might think. As it turns out, companies barely understand millennials, and they sure as hell don't understand Gen Z, which means by just answering questions about topics you like anyway, you can earn yourself a nice chunk of change. The basic premise is simple. Ipsos will offer you to answer a few surveys about topics that interest you, and you'll be able to redeem credit for things like PayPal, DoorDash, or Amazon. I expect many of you have probably signed up to these types of survey apps before and never seen a cent for your time, but Ipsos is literally the 3rd largest research agency in the world, so they need the opinions of as many people as they can. To be entirely upfront, you're probably not going to get rich for doing a bunch of surveys while watching Netflix, but you might make enough money to afford a battle pass every few months, which isn't exactly a bad deal. If you could stand to earn a few easy dollars, then a link to sign up to I say will be down below, because if your data is being sold anyway, the money is going to feel much better in your pocket. Another difficult part of these games to intertwine would be combining Battlefield's historically rigid class system with Titanfall's much more free-form way of handling loadouts. However, this doesn't mean they are incompatible. Generally, I think opening up all weapons to all classes makes a lot more sense in this instance, as if everyone can be as mobile as a pilot, what a player chooses to use is simply up to personal preference. Classes are at their very core how the player contributes to their wider team, and that's exactly how they should be treated in a Titanfall-themed Battlefield game. With this in mind, these team play aspects should be heavily streamlined to keep up with the faster pace of Titanfall. For example, medics should be given a smart pistol-like revive gun, which would let them pick up teammates quickly while on the move, which would let them keep their team alive without breaking their stride. Engineers on the other hand, would be able to repair and buff titans, perhaps even being able to save them from a doomed state, if given enough breathing room. Titanfall has never had much of an emphasis on ammo management, which is why I think the support class should instead hand out specialized ammo. This could be used to specifically take down titans, mark anyone tagged, or maybe just make a gun more stable. There's a lot of ways you could tweak this class, but all of them could provide a lot of help to their team. As a small side note, in addition to larger and more effective health or ammo bags, players should be able to magnetically take smaller supplies from relevant classes from a distance, which would allow them to fill their role without having to explicitly slow down to perform these duties. Moving on, the recon class would obviously be more concerned with providing intelligence to your team, so a handful of data knives would serve this purpose quite well. Having specific abilities attached to classes is another question entirely. Many players from both franchises simply won't play without a grappling hook, for example, and locking it behind one class or another might create an imbalance. I'd suggest that abilities would instead be available to all classes, while utility items be locked to specific roles. We now come to vehicles, and this is where things become interesting. Instead of explicitly named Titans featured in Titanfall 2, I'd propose bringing back the original system, where players could choose a light, medium, or heavy chassis, while being able to fully customize everything else in a Titan's loadout. Along with this, Titans would all have access to a supportive ability, designed to help their team take and hold points of interest. Perhaps they could create large smoke screens like Bangalore, or channel a trophy system like Watson, but the idea would be to give all Titans a way to better play an objective, and push to where they are most needed. However, Titans aren't the only vehicles in the Titanfall universe. Tanks and jets can easily be incorporated into the fray, which leads to all kinds of interplay for how more conventional vehicles might interact with Titans. This isn't even accounting for some of the more niche Titans that we see in lore, such as the Mortar Titan, or Viper's notorious modified Flying North Star. If you wanted to go super crazy, you could even have experimental 5-man Super Titans, which would require a full crew to operate effectively. In Titanfall, Titans are on a long cooldown that can be shaved down by scoring kills or playing the objective. In Battlefield, however, vehicles are much more limited, while also being generally stronger. As you might imagine, having potentially 128 Titans on the field at the same time could be pretty fun, but I think there are ways around making this a foregone conclusion, without restricting what players are able to do. Keeping the Titanfall system where players shave down their timer would still be the best way to handle vehicles. However, I'd suggest giving the player the option to call upon alternative assets. This could be anything from an airstrike, a Kraber that fires explosive bullets, Rampart's minigun, or a nuclear battery from Frontier Defense. There seems to be a lot of players from both franchises who much prefer infantry combat, so being able to reward these guys while incentivizing alternatives to Titans may kill two birds with one stone. Perhaps the most exciting part of this entire concept, however, is the end of each game. The end of a typical Battlefield match can often feel somewhat abrupt and anticlimactic, but not if we take the best parts of each series. For those who don't know, the end of each Titanfall match has permadeath turned on, and the losing team is tasked with making their way to a dropship and escaping with their lives. If successful, the escaping players actually receive as much of a reward as the winning team, meaning losing can often be more fun than winning. For an 128 player server, however, this level of intensity is now turned up to 11, as the end of each game turns into a full-scale evacuation. Strangely, I think one of the biggest hurdles to making such a project would be mostly technical. Having teams this large, on maps so expansive, where everyone can call upon $10 million death machines that fall from the sky, isn't exactly easy. Neither is creating maps that cater to Titans without making them oppressive, allow destruction without destroying the free run mechanics, and somehow keeping the entire experience balanced. Its development would be long, expensive, and would stretch current hardware to its limits, making the entire process even more difficult. Perhaps the biggest barrier, however, would be the franchises themselves, both of which have a cult following, whose fans can be extremely divisive about what they want in their respective games. There are some Battlefield players who didn't like the introduction of sliding, while there are Titanfall fans who see the stemmed out Apex Legends gameplay as too slow. Making all fans happy would by definition be an impossible task, and this creates even more of a risk to EA. With this in mind, it could be argued that both franchises aren't being entirely utilized at the moment, and attempting to make one of the most ambitious shooters ever made could revitalize both series in one fell swoop. Apex Legends has made an incomparable amount of money compared to both the Battlefield and Titanfall series over the last 5 years, and I'd bet just about anything that if EA thought it would meet the success of Apex Legends, they'd start development tomorrow. The conditions have literally never been better for such a bold combination. I now turn it on to you, the viewers. If you think such a concept could work, I'd love to read your fun ideas or interesting gameplay features. Likewise, if you think this project would crash and burn, I'd also like to know why. But until next time, have fun and embrace the bullshit.
I need it so bad. Stim me up with copium, doctor, I fear it won't last. Pilots, I hope you were locked in cause we need a hold fast. Got me crying in the club, screaming we are so bad. Once was hiding in the shrubs on Homestead. From the Ions campaign, I understand nothing hope's dead. High on the playlist, of changing this alone made me mad. Not angry but filled with theories on this custodial staff. Give me my pills, I'm losing it, there's streets everywhere, oh man it hurts. They say our savior is some respawn janitor. Been a month of dope fiends.